Hello and welcome to the British Sitcom History Podcast. You are listening to part 2 of our look at No Job for a Lady, so if you haven't listened to part 1 yet, please do go back and check that out first. We've already talked about Penelope Keith quite a bit, and we've looked at some of our other main actors here in the show. We're also part way through the episode, and we're going to jump straight back into that now.
Let's get back to our scene. So we've gone to the newsagents, and there's been that argument about what should be banned, what should be sold, and again, that's more of the same. Now, the next scene, we're in Jean's office, which she shares with Ken, who you've mentioned before, Ken Miller MP, who's a Scottish Labour MP.
I can give you a bit of context on Ken, because what does he buy at the newsagents? He buys
I can't remember. Go on.
The Glasgow Herald and Trout and Salmon magazine.
Okay, I have a question. Why is the Glasgow Herald available for sale in a Westminster newsagents?
Because there's a lot of Scottish MPs.
You know what, you might be right, actually. That's me being a smart ass, and I think that's probably quite an accurate answer. So yeah, Ken's an interesting character. He's quite expository. You know, there's a lot of especially in that first series. Mm-hmm. He does a lot of explaining of the system. You know, he's kind of not quite her mentor, but you know, he's been there a long time, and that's the character. He's been there a long time. He's sort of beaten down by the system. You know what? He's quite Sir Humphrey. Not in quite the same way, but he's the person who always says, "Oh well, that won't work," and you know, he'll never commit to anything. He'll never agree with her on anything. He's always kind of hedging his bets. He's essentially defeated. He's like the old guy who's been there too long and just hasn't got any fight left in him.
Do you know what though? I think defeated isn't quite the right word. I think he's recognises the system. He isn't going to get what he wants out of the system, and he's settled into little victories. He's settled into that kind of like, I'm going to do what I can, and I am doing the best I can in this situation. I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to change the world. But I don't think he's defeated. I think he is doing good work for his constituents, and he's just a good, solid backbencher.
Do you know what? I think that's a fair criticism. Do you know what? Jean is me in my 30s, and Ken is me in my now I'm 50. Like, that's what it is. You know, you sort of I said beaten, and I think you're right. I don't think that is right. I think it's just more pragmatic, more practical. What are the battles that are worth fighting?
Yeah, and I think we can probably assume that he was a bit more like Jean 10 years ago when he first came into Parliament.
Well, he's Scottish Labour. You know, Scottish Labour are notoriously combative. You know, to become an MP, they're very partisan. I guess you've got to have sharp elbows to get that. Mm-hmm. But which is a surprise that he's so, well, I've written the word wet here, which is probably a bit unfair. He often vocalises he's worried what the local party will think if he does this, if he votes for her motion, you know, they'll have my guts for garters when I go home at the weekend.
Yeah, and he is self-protective. He just kind of put his own kind of career above his ideals in a way that Jean doesn't. Yeah. But that's why he's still there. That's why he's still in Parliament, and there is a practical reality to that. But then he's not just completely selling out and like, yeah, I'll do whatever. Like, how do I make some money out of this?
What about the actor who plays Ken, Paul Young? I do recognise this guy actually, and he was one of those faces that I sort of back in the 80s and 90s, you'd kind of see him in a lot of things, especially a lot of Scottish things, like he was in Rabsy Nesbitt, that sort of thing. Yeah. And he's in Still Game, isn't he?
That's what I knew immediately. I was like, oh, that's Shug. Yeah. That's basically all I knew him from. Obviously, Still Game is a bit more my generation, and I love Still Game. So yeah, I mean, Paul Young, he was born into the industry. His dad was an actor, so he started out very young. But yeah, like you said, he was sort of in all the Scottish programmes, not comedy.
He's got a very Scottish CV, hasn't he?
Yeah. He was, because presumably he was based in Scotland rather than going down to that London. And you know, he just worked with BBC Scotland, always produced a lot of things, and you just say kind of in your area. Not specialising in comedy particularly, he did all sorts of things. In fact, it does feel like No Job for a Lady in terms of a good, solid, regular role in a, you know, pretty mainstream TV show was, you know, a little bit of a step up perhaps, or at least more solid, regular role. And then kind of went on to carry on being a good, solid career, and Still Game was a nice regular role for him in his later years. He's still alive as we speak, but Still Game is pretty much all he's done for the last, sort of 15 years. But the notable thing that I found out in my little bit of research that I didn't know is that apparently he's best known as the presenter of a fishing programme. Starting in the early 90s.
Salmon Weekly.
Yeah, exactly. That does seem to be very much a Paul Young thing. And presented this sort of Scottish, I'm going to travel the world doing a bit of fishing show for 10, 15 years. And that's pretty much what he's most recognised as, apparently.
Well, in The Office, then, back to our scene, this is a great example of everything we've just been talking about. So she's coming in all blood and thunder about getting porn banned from the shop and having it taken off the shelves. And, you know, we talk about page 3 a little bit. And Ken kind of agrees with her, but doesn't care enough. And that's the point. He's more pragmatic. And he kind of, I can't remember exactly how he words it, but he basically says, look, you're basically right, but I've got a lot of constituents who like page 3. You know, it's not going to be popular if I come out against that. Mm. And that's democracy, isn't it?
Yes.
Like, he's not wrong.
Yes, but there are also...
You see how I've changed? I'm nearly 50. Do you know when the page 3... when page 3 was banned? Do you know when the topless models on page 3 were banned?
It was very recently, like maybe 2 years ago.
Well, it's a bit of a trick question because they never banned. The Sun stopped printing them in 2015.
Oh, that's longer ago than I thought, actually.
Mm. But, you know, just to give a bit of background, so in 1970, the Sun started printing pictures of topless teenagers on page 3. And, like, the debate is that appropriate for something that's being dropped through everyone's front door? You know, I love a lovely pair of booby-doos as much as the next man, but, you know, time and a place is the point.
Yeah.
And so in the 1980s, this was a big thing. The feminazis nagged on about it, and that's kind of what we're seeing. That's what Gene is here in our drama. The No More Page 3 campaign started in 2012. And so 3 years later is when page 3 stopped. But I find that really interesting because, as I say, it wasn't banned. It was that the Sun, just without any fanfare, they just stopped. They didn't even say they were stopping. They just stopped doing it. Mm. And, you know, the Sun didn't suddenly become feminists. You know, I think Rupert Murdoch remains a lizard of a man. But they made a commercial decision. That it is better for us to not have this than to have it. And therefore, that is a really good indicator of what they think is changing trends in society. So 2015 is when more people thought this was a bad thing than thought it was a good thing.
I think I disagree with you on that. Obviously, that's a decision, you know, a commercial decision. If people don't like it, then they're going to stop buying the paper, right? But, and I think this is relevant to this episode we've just looked at, porn is very, very different in a post-internet world. Who needs a pair of tits on your newspaper when you can literally flick it up on your phone at a second's notice?
Interesting.
Tits are just so easily found these days that having them there is no longer of any value. So the people who will buy your paper for that, it doesn't matter anymore. And the people who won't buy your paper for it, you can make that impact. So just get rid of them.
It's a fair point.
There's no value to it.
But this is the thing about context, isn't it? So if you want to go online and find pornography, fine. But when it's dropped through the letterbox, I know people don't get papers delivered anymore, but, you know, and it's just on your breakfast table with the family there, that's less appropriate. Yeah, I think this is a Stuart Lee quote. I'm not sure, but he was talking about, you know, he got in trouble with Jerry Springer, the opera, and the Daily Mail quoted some lines from that show on their front page, and he said that is obscene. Like, if you just quote them out of context, it's obscene. It looks obscene. It is obscene, but in the play, in the context of a theatre of people who paid to go and see it, it's not. Context is important. And the analogy he used, which has always stuck with me, he said, if I went to a primary school and projected a porn film onto the wall of that primary school, you would arrest me, not Ron Jeremy.
Yeah.
So the point is, context is everything. And there's no such thing as obscenity. What there is an obscene place to post these things.
Yeah. This is also positioned as a women's issue, very much so. I mean... Gene says, are there any other lady MPs who have tried to sort this out? And he was like, yeah, all of them.
Yeah.
So it's very much positioned as, okay, the women have come into Parliament, they're going to start messing about with the porn. So just to talk about the woman's issues a little bit, this is a show that very much positions itself. Our main character is interested in women's issues, and then occasionally she's like, well, I don't want to be the women's issues MP. I am an MP, but yeah, women's issues are important to me because I'm a woman. And it sort of highlights the fact that, well, this is why you need more women MPs, right? This is why you need.
And do you think that that's because that's the influence of the female writer? No, of course. It's 1990. Women couldn't write sitcoms back then.
No, there's about 3 women who wrote sitcoms in the first 60
Shall we
years
talk
of
about the
sitcoms.
writers? Shall we talk about Alex Shearer?
Yeah, of course. That is Alex Male, not female.
Yeah, Alexander.
Yeah, Alex Shearer.
I didn't know the name. I don't know the name.
I'll be honest, yeah, I saw the name and I thought, I don't know much about that. I'll look him up and do a bit of research. And to my shame, because he's got quite a litany of sitcom credits here. And so I feel like I should have heard about him before. He is Scottish, actually, interestingly enough, and wrote for radio and TV, was just kind of one of those people throughout his 20s, working odd jobs and trying to get scripts made, trying to do things, a struggling writer. And his first big kind of commission for the BBC was a show called Chalk and Cheese. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
No, I don't know that.
but it's notable because Michael Crawford is in it, and he was sort of hot off of Some Mothers Do Have 'Em. This was 1979. This was like his next thing, yeah. And Chalk and Cheese is an interesting one because the first episode, it's like it was a pilot. I believe they made it with Jonathan Pryce originally, and then brought in Michael Crawford later on. Okay. But it's a half-hour drama. It's a standalone play, and it works really nicely as that. And then, like, the second episode is like, okay, now we have to turn this into a sitcom, and we have to kind of really get some contrived reasoning as to make this work, and it's less good. but it's an interesting piece, and Michael Crawford doing something very different to Frank Spencer, so everyone was like, "Ooh, what's going on? This is crazy." But wasn't a big success, but I guess did well enough that it was getting him other work, and he's got little bits and pieces here, 2 episodes of this, 1 episode of that, where he's just obviously a kind of a writer for hire. But let's look at the things he kind of wrote, he created and wrote. There's Sink or Swim with Peter Davison, which is a fairly...
I think we might have mentioned that before, but I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, it's a fairly standard by the numbers kind of sitcom-y thing. That ran for a few series. And
that
then...
was extraordinarily dismissive.
Yes, it was, wasn't it? But then, more interestingly than that, in 1985 he created and wrote a show called The Front Line. Now, this is a sort of somewhat forgotten thing, but the concept is there's these 2 mixed race but of West Indian heritage brothers. They live together. One is a policeman and one is a Rasta, and hence hilarity ensues. Like, one is sort of trying to make his way in British society, the other is kind of railing against somewhat.
Yes. Well, presumably there weren't any black writers back then either, so he had to step into that breach.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't feel like that. And this is 1985, so I think, it's Channel 4. It's going to be something really kind of like, but no.
Trixie Worrell was busy, so we're going to have to bring in this white fella. Yeah,
so it feels just slightly out of place there, and like... And also, like, the older brother is played by Paul Barber, so we,
of course,
good.
It was 1985. You need a black actor.
Yeah,
where else are you going to go?
But that's it. So, like, one of the brothers is a Scouser, the other one is West Indian accent. So, but I don't know. I'm sure there's some context to explain that. I haven't watched a lot of it.
Do you remember we saw Paul Barber in To the Manor Born? Do you remember what he played?
Oh, God, yeah, he plays the Jamaican Steel Band. That was his full
That's right,
credit.
yeah. And the camera cuts across to him, and to the Jamaican Steel Band, and it's just Paul Barber smoking a spliff.
Yeah, it was a different time. But then, off the back of that, he wrote The Two of Us, which was a Nicholas Lyndhurst show. Again, pretty...
I remember that. With Janet Dibley?
Yeah. Fairly standard, here's a couple, and it's a sitcom. But
what year was that? Because I watched that when it went out, and I haven't seen it since.
86 to 90.
Okay.
And this is Nicholas Lyndhurst in his, Only Fools and Horses peak, so it was, a big enough show in that sense. So not insignificant, albeit somewhat forgotten now. No Job for a Lady. And then in 1994, he won series of Law and Disorder. Let me just say that again. Law and Disorder. Can you imagine what that's about, Gareth?
I see what they've done there. Is that about lawyers or policemen?
Yeah, it's about lawyers, yeah. So, and it's Penelope Keith. That's the interesting thing here. Penelope Keith is a barrister, and each week she deals with some sort of case, and she's a barrister. Hilarity ensues.
A female barrister?
Well, I haven't watched it all, but...
Are you sure she's not the secretary? Oh.
Well, that's an interesting thing because in terms of Law and Disorder, that doesn't seem to be a big factor of it. It just seems to be like, look, we've got Penelope Keith and she's a barrister. That's great.
Yeah, okay.
So he was writing for TV for 15 years and doing pretty well by the standards of these things. And like I say, a lot of these shows are not like, they're not the ones that have resounded through history. They're not the ones we're really looking at. But
I mean, this one hasn't, has it? No Job for a Lady.
But good, solid products of their time and were made, and some of them did a couple of series, some did a few series, whatever. But I don't know. There's no, and this is kind of what I was feeling about No Job for a Lady. I think there's no voice. There's no kind of I am writing something that I care about kind of energy, and perhaps that's a little bit judgmental.
You think
but
he's just a writer for hire?
Yeah, like why are you writing something about two West Indian guys living in Britain? Like what? Like where's your context for that? Why are you writing something about a female MP? You're not from the world of politics. You're not a woman. What is your context to write this? And I'm not saying you have to write what you know. There are people out there who are just good, solid writers.
It's not a passion project,
but I think you lose that passion, and perhaps that's why they're not. They haven't stood the test of time.
I hear what you're saying.
Anyway, so since the 90s, he doesn't really write for TV anymore. But he has become a very prolific and pretty successful novelist. He really churns it out. I think that's perhaps similar to his TV work. At least one of his novels has been turned into like a children's television show and stuff. That like he's out there, he's doing good stuff, and still working now, I think.
Earning a living. That's good. I don't begrudge anyone that. So we went off on a Alex Shearer-shaped tangent there. Do you remember we were in the office, weren't we, with Ken and Jean?
Yeah.
Can we just quickly, before we move on to the next scene, talk about the office, just as a set?
Yes.
Any thoughts on the set?
It's very cramped and dark and dank.
Yeah,
but
which is accurate. I mean, you hear this again. You hear MPs still to this day saying that the accommodation is terrible in the Palace of Westminster. They get these tiny dank offices with rats running around.
Well, yeah.
I actually just watched literally last week, I watched a documentary on BBC about Mary Black, this young Scottish MP who's stepped down after 10 years. She's retired. I think she's like 29. And one of the things that she was saying was, the working conditions just physically are awful, and she was showing pictures of mice and rat drop-ins in the office and all that sort of thing. So I think in that sense it's very good, but there's like Labour posters everywhere. There's stuff all over incidentally, GDPR nightmare. No confidentiality there. There's just paperwork and records everywhere. I operate a clean desk policy, Alan. I hope you know.
Do you want to quickly compare and contrast that with Godfrey Egan's office, which we see in this episode as well?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we'll get there in a minute, but let's contrast them now. Yeah, so Godfrey's office is bigger. He doesn't share it, and that is nonsense. Like, it doesn't matter how grand you are, you get assigned the same office. But yeah, he's got a beautiful office.
And as much as he is in government and all that, and he's posh, but he is a backbencher. He's not like in the...
Yeah, he's not in government. Yeah, he's in the Tory party. He's not in government. He's just another backbencher. Do you think he might have slipped someone a £50 note to get a better office?
Certainly do, yes. That is exactly what he would do.
There's a portrait of Her Majesty behind him.
Is there really?
Yeah, you just for younger listeners, Her Majesty was the mother of King Charles. It's also there's a tiny framed picture behind him as well, which I couldn't see. The old definition quality wasn't quite good enough, but it could have been Margaret Thatcher, and because I was looking for signs of Thatcher, evidence of the Iron Lady.
I didn't particularly notice that, I must admit, but I did notice in series 3 in Richard Monckton's office, which is the same set. A portrait of John Major just in a frame in the back.
Well, that probably was. I wasn't sure. It looked like it was basically a black and white photo of a portrait with big hair. So I assumed, it could have been Michael Heseltine, but I assumed it was Margaret Thatcher. Here's a basic question for you. So Jean and Ken's office, they've got their two desks pushed together so they're facing each other across these two desks.
Yes.
Would you do that, or would you like back to back? Is that a question which is like one of those Rorschach tests? I'd be back to back. Leave me alone. I don't want to be staring at someone all day.
I think they do that a lot, the face-to-face stuff, because it kind of encourages a sort of convivial office atmosphere.
Not interested in that.
But you wouldn't allow your employees to do that because you want them to get on with their work.
Well, no, what I mean is it's bad enough that I have to share an office. I would like to at least pretend I'm not sharing an office. I understand that for the purpose of a sitcom, that wouldn't be great for television.
What do you do when you're on your Zoom call, though? I can see some bloke behind you working at his desk.
That's all right. There's nothing wrong with that. Actually, do you know what? You just made me realise that on these desks, there are no computers. And that's the difference now. There's no big screen in front of them. That's why they're staring at each other. There's no computer. There's no bloody computer. It's 1990. They haven't got computers.
They haven't got a typewriter.
That's why. They've got nothing. They've just got constituent files just spilling over everywhere.
Yeah.
Let's finish all the sets. So we talked about the officers. We talked about the Price House. That we sometimes get some sort of communal shots where they're walking through the lobby. We're walking through the lobby of the House of Commons and there's a policeman there. That's a very cheap set. It looks like some sort of painted pillars behind them, and just in terms of verisimilitude, the actual lobby of the House of Commons is massive. It's like quite a big space, but I understand they can't replicate that.
I think they do quite a nice job of making it feel quite big and grand within what must be a very limited space.
I understand the necessity, but it doesn't feel big and grand. I'll tell you what it feels, which I think they're trying to do. It feels like quite hurried. It's not the sort of place you'd hang around. It feels like a corridor. Another part of the set dressing of the lobby is Harry the policeman, which is perhaps a little unkind to the actor. But let's talk about him, because he sort of pops up in, they'll say hello to him and they interact with him, and he has got a speaking role, but he doesn't really do much. But his role is a sort of, he's kind of like the eye-rolling man on the street, and he just thinks they're all ridiculous, and whatever, okay, fine, yes, sir, yes, madam. And he sort of humours them, but he couldn't really care less. Yeah,
he gets a couple of gags. So in Series 3, they let him have a couple of punchlines as he just kind of mutters under his breath as they walk away.
I mean, on a practical level, I'm not sure how much security he's adding to the Palace of Westminster. If it kicks off, what's he going to do? I'm hoping there's snipers somewhere as well. This is actually, joking aside, this is the height of the IRA in 1990. Airy Neave was a Tory MP who was one of Margaret Thatcher's closest associates. And he was actually assassinated in Westminster by a car bomb in the car park of Westminster. That was in 1979. So I've gone off at a tangent here, but the point is, you would hope there would be more security than Harry the Bobby standing in the lobby.
He's there to make it look good. And so that set, it's okay. It's a bit small, but I don't know. It serves its purpose. Interesting to note here, this is perhaps very much a sitcom world, but Godfrey's office has a door directly onto that lobby, which feels...
I hadn't noticed that. Yeah.
But that's just a bit of sitcom logic, I think.
I think what I would like to point out is the set that we don't have.
Yes.
We never have any action in the chamber of the House of Commons.
Certainly
and obviously,
not.
We've seen other dramas do that. We've seen other comedies do that. But that's a deliberate choice. And I wonder why. Why have they decided we'll have no House of Commons action?
Yeah, so obviously the New Statesman, we see it all the time. And there was specifically a House of Commons set that was built up in Yorkshire TV. Its studios, and it was built for a specific drama. We talked about this when we did the New Statesman, so this was a while ago. Go back to that if you want the details, but I can't remember them off the top of my head. But it was there, it existed. This is ITV and it's Thames TV, so perhaps, but you feel like, that could be negotiated, right? If you really wanted to shoot something in there.
Yeah, you hire the set.
So, it's a choice, maybe to distinguish it.
I don't think it suffers. I don't miss it particularly, but it is notable. Like I realised several episodes in, this is set in Parliament. Most of our scenes are within that building, but we never see the chamber, and that's odd.
Yeah,
that's noteworthy.
I think it's a choice, but it's about the backroom machinations, isn't it? It's not about the kind of the cut and thrust of the chamber, perhaps.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. I've bounced us around all the locations there. Let's go back. So we've just had. Ken and Jean falling out about this censorship business. Now we move to the lobby and we get Jean interacting with Godfrey on the same subject. And to her great surprise, he completely agrees with her.
Yes, and then to nobody's surprise, he's very much coming at it from a different angle. He also agrees that things shouldn't be sold in the shops or shouldn't be out on public view. But what he wants to hide is very different to what she wants to cover up. Mm-hmm. His main problem seems to be that there is stuff in the library about homosexuality and saying that it's okay to be gay, and he's not impressed.
Yeah, we don't want that. This is a great. I mean, this sums up why I love George Baker, because he starts off by sneering at her, all her crusading campaigning, and he's like really, really patronising, really laying it on thick. And then he sort of says, "Oh, by the way, I agree with you. So I'm gonna belittle you, even though I'm completely on your side. Are you saying you support me, Godfrey? Like a truss." What a great line that is, and he delivers it with such vigour. And this is where we get the first time in this episode we see Godfrey's laugh, which he delivers so beautifully. This is a man who has never had an ounce of doubt, never had an ounce of self-consciousness. He just walks through the world in however he wants. And that laugh is perfect encapsulation of it.
And the scene essentially ends with Jean saying, "Well, my only concern is if you support me, I feel like there must be something wrong."
Yeah.
Don't ignore that instinct, Jean.
So then we go to Godfrey's office and we get into a bit more detail here. So, she wants to ban the porn, his usual, is Playboy. And whereas he wants to ban, as you said, all the stuff that promotes homosexuality, as he would put it.
What was this? Mummy has a new girlfriend? Something like that? That was the title of the book.
Norman and... What was it?
Donald and Ronald or something.
Ronald and Donald, that was it, yeah.
Truly, only the other day I took my grandson to the local library, and Little Black Sambo has been banned from the children's section. While Ronald lives with Donald, and Mummy's got a new friend, freely available, with the most explicit illustrations.
And shouldn't they be? Aren't there any gay Tories, Godfrey?
There probably are, but I don't think we're very happy about it.
There's a nice bit of business there. As he says that, I don't know if you noticed this, he sort of sweeps the desk with his hand, like sort of brushing away some imaginary dust. It's like, oh, well, I don't want to think about that. It's a lovely bit of business from Baker, that, yeah. But, there's a point here that the episode is sledgehammering into us, which is people are offended by different things, and any kind of censorship is going to result in someone losing out.
Yeah, you say this is unacceptable, then something else is unacceptable immediately. There's a character later on, Norman, who is the whip. We'll talk about him later on. But he says, his line was, "Everyone's tolerant until they find something they can't stand." And it's like, that's it. Yeah, we've all got our own lines that we draw. And it's about balancing them as a society, isn't it? So that's kind of what the whole thing is dealing with. And then, so if we just jump to the next scene, where we have another character, another lady MP, Liz, who basically... her and Gina working together, because Liz is like, "Well, I've tried to do something about this before. Here, have my help, but you're not going to get it." And it kind of, I don't know, this character is here. It doesn't particularly add anything. I don't know if it.
I don't think the scene added anything. As I went back and read my notes, I'm like, well, why was that scene even there?
I think it's just to demonstrate that, okay, the female MPs have tried to do this before and they've basically been slapped down. And there's a pretty stark kind of point here where Liz says, I stood up in the chamber and said we should stop page 3, and the discussion became about my boobs and the size of my boobs. And it's like, that's quite a stark, something that would absolutely not happen today and would be completely unacceptable, at least in front of people. But then that's the way it was in 1991. So I think that perhaps they're just trying to really hammer that home. But here's an interesting thing about this scene. I wanted to see if you can explain this to me. So Liz says, the discussion just became about her boobs. And Jean responds, "Oh, I'll be all right. I've got bumper stickers for mine."
I'm glad you brought this up, because I've got notes on this.
What does it mean?
I don't understand. Does that mean they're big? Does that mean they're small? Does that mean they're on the back of a car? I have got nothing.
No, that's
I've
what
got
it means.
nothing.
It means on the back of a car, but I don't know what. So anyway, I don't know what that means. If anyone could explain that particular line to me, please. There was another one, actually, where she discovers the porno magazines in the newsagents, and she's looking at them. She says something along the lines of, "Good Lord, look at that. You can see the back of her teeth." Does that mean she got them? Does that mean... what I think it means, I'm not going to say out loud. But there must be a gaping open...
It's a bit much, wasn't it?
Mouth,
bit much.
Right? I don't think that was on the front of Playboy, even in 1991. Not that kind of magazine. Anyway, I'm not sure what that means. But let's move on.
So the next scene, let's move on from that scene, because it doesn't really add anything. The next scene, we go back to the newsagents, and we start to see how Jean's principles play out and impact the real world. Now... I really hate this scene because it's just so unsubtle. It's such a sledgehammer. It's like, when you watch an American sitcom and they have to explain what's happening to you. They have to explain how you're supposed to feel. Yeah. So they're basically bullying him into taking the porn off the top shelf.
Yeah.
And, he says, you're asking me to take a drop in my income for your principles. Listen, I'm on his side. I agree. I think it's outrageous. And then they offer to make a donation to charity for the same amount. And he's like, what good is that to me? I'm trying to feed my family and charity's not good.
But yeah, he's right. He's going to lose income.
He's dead right. I'm totally on his side.
And he specifically says, it's not just the magazine sales I lose. People come in to buy the magazine and then they'll buy a paper and they'll buy, a chocolate bar and something else.
So I didn't like the unsubtlety of that and how it had to be all spelled out. But then it gets even worse because his daughter comes out. His daughter's in her school uniform. She looks about 11 or 12. And she gives him a cup of tea. Brought you a tea, Daddy? And they all sort of, the two MPs look at him. And he's like, oh, all right, you win. Because I've got a daughter. As a father of a daughter, I suddenly understand feminism. The appearance of his daughter, if anything, says, look, I've got family to support. Yeah. I can't afford your principles. I think the appearance of his daughter should have strengthened his hand, not weakened it. Anyway, so the upshot is he takes all the porn off the shelf and he starts to make less money. Brilliant. Well done.
Yes. And then Godfrey Egan comes in looking for a bit of his usual. And the newsagent... Appalled to find that his Playboy isn't there anymore. Yes.
And yet, we can still find on the shelves Marxism Today, Gay Times, Spare Elbow, which made me laugh because it's spare rib. Rib and elbow, not even close. But it still made me chuckle, that one.
And just in terms of we're really sort of bigging up George Baker. This is a lovely stuff when he's getting... Because he's getting angry. And like you say, we don't see him kind of lose control really much. He's very poised.
It's because it's impacting on him.
Yeah.
His only principle is, this has affected me.
I see. So any rampant Trotskyite or Ronald and Donald can have their interests catered for, but a red-blooded Englishman who's committed the unpardonable sin of being born normal can't get his usual.
It's a lovely...
It is good stuff. It is very good stuff.
So, he confronts Gene about this and it sort of pushes him into taking action the other way. And he gets his petition up to say, oh, you shouldn't be selling the Marxist Today, etc., etc. So we can all see where this is going. But just before we kind of lead into the end here, I want to mention Freddie. So Freddie is a sort of semi-regular character who is representing the feckless Tory, I guess he's supposed to be.
Yeah, he's just he's a bit of a cipher, really, isn't he? He's just another Tory MP that Godfrey, dismisses and talks down to. And that's it. That's the only role he really plays. He doesn't ever really add anything to the plot or the drama.
Yeah. Well, what I liked about this particular scene where he appears is Godfrey comes and goes, oh, because no, we can't get a bit of the usual, the newsagents. And Freddie kind of goes, oh, yeah, I bought Eagle comic instead. I wanted to see what Dan Dare was up to. And I just like that because this is what Gene thinks is going to happen when people go to newsagents. Oh, there's no porno. Oh, I'll get a comic instead,
Yeah.
Because Freddie is the sort of feckless fool that Gene is imagining in her head, the sort of the public.
But I actually think that what would really happen is that next Gene would come for the Eagle because it's masculine and it's pro-war propaganda, and she'd have that off the shelves next because you give these people an inch.
You're falling into the slippery slope fallacy there. Okay, well,
but so we get a nice confrontation now in the tea room between Godfrey and Jean. This is where the character really annoyed me. Jean, she's basically talking about women being exploited. And she knows best, and it's she's kind of this self-appointed arbiter of everything that should be allowed and shouldn't be allowed, and what other women, how they need protecting and what they should be doing. And good line. Godfrey says, "Well, I'm not a woman. I'm a conservative." but this is the bit where Jean was really getting on my nerves. I'm like, who the hell do you think you are?
And we have a scene here as well with Norman. the whip of the Labour Party, who is a regular character. Doesn't do a lot in this episode particularly, but I want to talk about him because he's a significant character.
He's quite a major character in the ensemble, isn't he?
Yeah, and right here, she's discussing it with him. And Norman, he's the whip, so he's the guy who comes around and tells them what to do and stop messing about and do what the party tells you. But his role kind of in the show is a little bit like Ken, who is the friendly voice of pragmatism. Norman is the brutal voice of reality.
No, what I mean is I am sympathetic to anyone who feels their beliefs have been insulted, even when their beliefs I don't myself hold.
And that includes fascists, Satanists, paedophiles and double-glazing salesmen, does it?
Well, apart from them.
That's what I thought. Everyone's tolerant until they find something they can't stand.
In which gent's convenience did you qualify as a Bogram lawyer, Norman?
I'm trying to give you both sides of the case. That is what the whip is for, to make a simple issue complicated.
He's never that brutal, though. Like,
No.
you hear stories about the whips being very brutal, and he never lapses into that. I thought, at the start of the programme, when I started watching it, I thought, oh, this guy's going to be the real bad guy, the real bruiser. And he never really does that.
No, but I think he is a kind of a stark voice of reality. In this scene particularly, he sets out what about Salman Rushdie? We get that connection. We get we see Gene talking to the leader of the Muslim Shopkeepers Association, who is saying, "Yeah, we support your censorship bill.
Yeah.
let's ban all this sick filth that we don't like." Exactly what was said in the first 3 sentences of the episode that we're just repeating over and over.
Yes, exactly. We've heard it all before, yeah.
And we get Norman doing that. He just says, sorry, Gene, but this isn't going to happen. You're going to do this and then this will happen. And you've got these ideals and they're not going anywhere. So a voice of experience, but also you're right. He does kind of encourage her. He will let her off the leash a little bit sometimes. And I think that's politics, right? There's not these black and white characters. It is a give and take, and there is movement, there is social progress. And, as much as you stick to the rules and you stick to precedent, things have to change. Progress happens. So perhaps it's quite a good rounded character in that sense.
I think that's a fair assessment. But I don't know. I guess what I'm wanting is more of a stereotype. I want a more sort of brutish bully in that whip character.
Yeah. He's doing the Welsh accent. What more do you want?
Is he Welsh? It wasn't a very good Welsh accent.
He's not. It's a straight down the middle Welsh accent. I think it's solid, but it's not kind of got the nuance.
It lapsed a little bit. Is the actor's not Welsh? Is he?
No. Garfield Morgan is the actor. No, he's English. But he's another.
Well, that's a beautiful Welsh name, Garfield Morgan.
Yeah. I think he's from Birmingham, so probably a bit of Welsh in there. But he's another character actor who's in loads of things. He's best known because he was a regular in The Sweeney.
He was their governor, wasn't he?
Yeah, which is slightly out of my remit, but that's kind of what he's known as. But he was in a litany of sitcom character roles and all sorts of other non-sitcom stuff as well. So he's just another one of those guys you see in a lot of things.
Let's skip through the episode. So things start to build up. Problems start to accumulate for Gene. So the next thing is we're back in the office and Gene is getting letters of support from the Daughters of the Bloody Tabernacle, who are like Christian fundamentalists who are anti-sex, And she's a little bit nervous about who's supporting her. And, Ken's laughing at her because people are praying for her. And it's like, if these people are supporting you, then, maybe you want to think about your position.
But also, just to address, again, the Muslim Shopkeepers Association, Jean lives in a constituency with a large Muslim population and a marginal constituency. She has to worry about those votes. If she's putting the satanic verses into the libraries, none of those people are going to vote for her. And that's a problem. And again, we're just repeating the same point over and over again.
Yes, we are.
Ban this sick filth. Well, one man's sick filth is another woman's, satanic verses.
But yet, even now, even 20 minutes into the episode, after we've been sledgehammered with this 4 or 5 times, she still seems to not have got it. She's got no self-awareness.
Yes. Well, if we jump to the end, the very last scene, basically the denouement is they go to the shop and it's closed. The shopkeeper, within a matter of days, it appears, has gone out of business.
Yeah.
Because he has tried to please all sides. And so, okay, if you don't like that,
so
I'll
he's
take it
removed
off.
the gay times and the Marxism Today and all those other things.
Yeah, and so he's taken off so many things that people aren't going in there anymore.
You missed a scene. You missed a scene, Alan. So he's removed those left wing publications from the shelf, and Jean's furious. She says out loud, "I'm going to boycott that shop." She's got absolutely no awareness. She's got no humility.
Yeah.
She's driven this guy out of business. And yeah, you're right. It all happens in a couple of days, which is crazy. But I was fuming. I was absolutely furious at the impact, and writ large, the impact on normal people of your principles. I understand that it was not particularly well written, but I was like, yes, that's right. No pragmatism. This is what happens when you stick to your principles and you won't listen to reason
and steamroll over other people. But
yeah,
the most fascinating thing for me is our final scene where her and Godfrey kind of discuss this, and she's writing a good luck card and getting him to sign it, which they're going to send to the shopkeeper who has set up a greengrocers in Watford. And they're putting a little collection
they're just
together.
blaming it. They're just having a laugh about it. They're sort of bantering about whose fault, which party it's to blame. And they say, "Oh, it's probably because there are double yellow lines outside his shop. No one can park. That's probably what it is." They don't give a damn.
They don't give a damn. And this was possibly the most surprising thing for me, because if at the end of this episode the shopkeeper loses his job, blah blah blah, and Jean's like, "Oh, I'm going to have to
grows.
kind of grow and learn, and perhaps sometimes you need to balance things," but that is not what happens. And I think even in this show in general, that's not the norm. I think she usually is kind of like, it's a more kind of pragmatic ending where she'll be like, "Oh, okay, so this is happening." This is just a brutal, like, "Oh, well, we did our best doing politics and whatever. See ya."
Yeah, on to the next one.
Yeah, it was a very unpleasant ending, wasn't it?
It was, and it did leave a bad taste in my mouth, definitely. And that this was essentially... So my biggest problem with No Job for a Lady is that it feels clumsily written. It feels a little bit too preachy and a little bit too obvious.
Yeah.
It's sort of spelling everything out and walking you through it in painful detail. But in terms of the characters, that lack of growth at the end is what really set me against Jean.
Yeah.
The idealism, that's fine. But to have learned nothing, to have grown not 1 inch is, that was the final nail in the coffin for me.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that was largely true for most of the episodes. The kind of the setup was, "Oh, Godfrey's doing this. Oh, I can't believe he's doing that. That's terrible." And then by the end of the show, she does it herself because, well, that's what I need to do to get the thing I want to happen. Oh, he's gaming the system. That's terrible. Oh, but if I game the system, this can happen. And it's not on the surface level funny enough to just get away with that. It's not a particularly laugh out loud funny kind of show. It's not got the clever wordplay of a Yes Minister. It's not got the kind of over the top theatrics of The New Statesman, just to make the similar kind of show parallels. It's just a bit boring and nothingy and very superficial, I think.
I'll tell you one thing we haven't talked about. There is another character in the drama, which is Jean's assistant. And it changes, doesn't it? Each series, a different actor, but it's essentially the same character. And the fact that it changes actor is telling of the character, because he's nothing, is he? You don't get any depth to this character at all.
No.
He's sort of just there to provide just a sort of external voice. But I don't know. At first I thought, this is going to be the Bernard character in for the Westminster analogy, but it's not. He don't really add anything. He's like a little bit like Freddie, the other Tory MP.
It does feel like, either make something of that or don't, because he is sort of in every episode. The guy who was in the first series, he went on to have a regular part in the bill, so I think that's why he dropped out.
Okay.
But here was the interesting thing I noted, that the person who plays that character in the third series had already appeared in the show. In the second series, he played a drug dealer. And I think that probably tells you a lot, the fact that they cast the same person as a drug dealer, like on a North London street drug dealer, and Oxford graduate parliamentary secretary. I think that probably tells you all you need to know about the casting they're doing for this show. Yeah.
I got a couple of other notes. Jean cycles to work, so we know she lives quite close to Westminster. Generally speaking, so if you were in 1990, if you were cycling to work, that probably meant something a bit different to what it does now. If you were cycling to work in 1990, that's because you'd been banned from driving. That's what people would have assumed. Unless you were a tree-hugging Labour MP. Her cycling to work means a lot more in 1990 than it does in 2025.
Yeah.
There's a couple of mentions about how the television cameras are on in the House of Commons, and obviously we don't see the chamber, so it's never really leaned on too much. But do you know when television cameras were introduced to Parliament?
Well, I know that they've addressed this in the New Statesman. The sort of TV cameras come in, and Alan Bastard sort of jumps out as being camera friendly, and they have a bit of fun with that. So I'm going to say 1990.
1989, yeah. And I remember this. I remember this happening. It was huge. You know, I've got a memory of watching the news and, there was an important debate in Parliament today, and they would have a still photograph of the chamber of the House of Commons and the name, I don't know, Roy Hattersley on the screen, and you would have the audio. You would be able to hear him, but not see him. I remember that. Although, I know that in the olden days, you didn't have audio either. They only brought that in at a certain point. Do you know when they did that?
Ooh, audio. Let me think. I'm going to say 1936.
1978.
Wow.
Isn't that unbelievable? So when Harold Wilson was Prime Minister, you never heard him, ever. There's no footage of him speaking in the House of Commons.
Hey, do you know what? I do know that, you know how you can buy, like, Churchill's speeches on CD and stuff?
Yeah.
Like, he went into a studio and did them, because obviously there was no recording.
Exactly, because he wanted the masses to hear them, and they couldn't. He made those speeches in the chamber of the House of Commons and got the MPs to vote for what he wanted and won over the Commons. But nobody else could hear that. He had to then go to a studio and record it again. He had to read it all out in a quiet room.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, 78 is later than I would have thought.
That's a lot later than I thought as well.
But perhaps I was thinking, like, what's the technological kind of limitations there? That was why I set that date. But I guess it was more, we don't want the people listening to what we're doing.
It's exactly that. And I remember the debate in the late 80s about television cameras and how it would cheapen things and people would start performing, the Alan Bastard thing. Yeah. And it has changed. It has changed the way people do it. Probably took a little longer than people thought, but it definitely has. But I remember watching The Fall of Thatcher. I remember Geoffrey Howe's resignation speech, seeing that on the telly. I remember her last Prime Minister's questions where she says, I'm enjoying this. And, like, I probably wasn't watching it live, but I've seen that. I've seen that footage. I know that footage. And if it had happened 18 months earlier, you wouldn't see any of that.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit of politics, eh? Yeah. I think that's. I think we've got a lot of mileage out of this. To be honest, it's been very good. I've enjoyed talking about that.
Yeah, and I think we've come down a little negative on the sitcom as a whole. It's an interesting little snapshot of its time. I think it's sort of fairly rightly forgotten. It's not. It doesn't feel like it's changed anything or said anything. It was watchable though. What are we doing next?
Well, we are going to revisit a topic that we've covered before. We're going to do Blackadder 2. If any of our listeners are about the same age as me, they won't even need to go and watch Blackadder 2 because it is imprinted on their brain. It's one of those things that I had a copy on VHS that I'd recorded off the telly. I know every word of that series.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to talking about it and hopefully not ruining it by over-analysis, which is what's happened a couple of times.
And hopefully not just doing lines and quotes out of the show
we'll try and retain some professionalism.
Too much of a fanboy.
We don't get paid for this, but professionalism, amateurism, whatever.
All right, so that's great. That's coming up next time. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get in touch with us in the meantime, or tell us about your thoughts on No Job for a Lady, you can find us on social media. We are on Facebook. If you search for British Sitcom History Podcast, you'll find our group there. Lots of comments going on there. Instagram, we're at BritComPod.
Well, that's all from us. So we'll see you next time. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you.
And goodbye.
Bye.